Imagine waking up one morning to discover that you're not a person anymore, just a number. Your name, your history, your dreams, wiped away in a single moment. Suddenly, you're forced into a place where survival isn't about being the strongest or the smartest. It comes down to something colder, something harsher, blind, merciless chance. Picture the air heavy with hopelessness, the walls echoing with the cries of people at their breaking point. Every day, more faces disappear, knowing deep down they'll never come back. In a world like this, most spirits get crushed under the weight of so much pain. The suffering is overwhelming, smothering every last spark of hope. But there was one man who wouldn't let himself be broken. He didn't just survive, he discovered something so incredible, so deeply human, it would change how we think about life itself. His name, Viktor Frankl. And in the brutal depths of a Nazi concentration camp, where hope barely survived as a flickering candle in the wind, Frankl unearthed a truth that defied all the darkness around him. He discovered a way to transform suffering not just for himself, but for anyone now. Imagine if I told you that this discovery could be the missing piece you're searching for in your own life. Viktor Frankl didn't just make it out here, came back with a philosophy that would guide millions of people through their toughest moments. You might be facing your own hardships, doubts, or pain right now. By the end of this video, you'll have a whole new perspective, and the secret Frankl uncovered could help you, too. This is the story of how Viktor Frankl cracked the code on life's meaning. Stick with me, because what he found can truly change your life. Let's rewind. Long before Viktor Frankl was a global name, before he helped shape our understanding of suffering and meaning, he was just a young kid in Vienna, Austria, living in the early 1900s, a city pulsing with wild, intellectual energy. This was the Vienna of Freud, of radical ideas and late-night cafe debates about purpose and the mysteries of the human mind. In all that noise sat young Viktor, intensely curious, a little restless, and always lost in thought. Born in 1905 to a modest Jewish family, Frankl's fascination with psychology started early. While other kids would spend their days playing games, he spent his quietly observing, asking himself questions most adults don't even try to answer. Why do people do what they do? Why does suffering crush some people, while others fight through it? And, above all, what gives life real meaning? By the time he reached his teenage years, these questions weren't just idle musings. They were personal, burning for answers, because Vienna, like all of Europe, was still hurting from World War I. The city was battered. People had lost everything. Economies crashed. Entire generations ran out of hope. Among Viktor's classmates and neighbors, he saw a tide of despair. Depression and suicide touched everyone. For many young people, life just felt pointlessly gray fog swallowing any sense of purpose. Frankl couldn't look away from the sadness that surrounded him. Instead of worrying about test scores or school dances, he was gripped by something far bigger. What keeps people from giving up? Determined to find real answers, he enrolled in medical school, specializing in neurology and psychiatry. But here's what set him apart from the very beginning. He wasn't interested in simply dissecting the mind, like a scientist with a specimen on the table. He wanted to understand people, not just their thoughts, but their inner lives, their souls. Even as a young doctor in his early 20s, Frankl was already reaching out to the most desperate patient students, teetering on the brink of suicide. While most therapists of the time focused on digging into childhood traumas or the dark corners of the unconscious mind, Frankl broke away from the pack. His approach was simple but radical. Help people find a reason to keep living. Instead of dwelling on pain, Frankl asked, what is something you still want? What's out there that makes life even and suffering worth holding on to? For one patient, it might have been a dream to become a writer. For another, maybe it was a confession of love they'd never had the courage to make. Sometimes, it was no more than the comforting thought that their very existence mattered. Somehow, to someone, Frankl noticed a pattern. The people who survived immense suffering almost always had some purpose. Any purpose. It could be tiny or grand, but it gave them the strength to keep going. This was a belief that would shape his whole career, and ultimately, his greatest gift to the world, just as he was starting to make his impact on Vienna. Another storm rolled in: the rise of the Nazis in the 1930s. Fear and suspicion grew like a shadow over the city. Frankl, like so many Jewish intellectuals, could feel the walls closing in. When the Nazis annexed Austria in 1938, Life changed overnight. Suddenly, Viktor Frankl had a choice: flee to America, where he'd already been offered a chance to continue his research, or stay in Vienna with his family, with his patients, and with his community. He chose to stay. And that decision would lead him down a path. Few could imagine a path that would put his ideas about meaning, suffering, and the human spirit to the ultimate test. In 1942, everything changed. Frankl's world came crashing down without warning. Armed soldiers banged at his door. Orders screamed. He had barely enough time to grab a few belongings before he, his wife, his parents, and his brother were all forced onto a train destination unknown. The destination, he would soon learn, was Theresienstadt, a Nazi concentration camp. For weeks, they were crammed into a cattle car, suffocating in the stench of sweat, fear, and death. There was no food, no water, and no way of knowing what would happen next. The journey was psychological torture. When the doors finally slid open, more commands: raus, schnell, out, quickly. And just like that, Viktor Frankl's old life was over. The respected doctor and scholar was gone. He was now just a number. His degrees, his years of research, his identity, none of it mattered here. Within months, he lost almost everything. His father died of starvation. His mother and brother were sent to the gas chambers. His beloved wife, Tilly, was sent to another camp. He would never see her again. Every day, people around him died, some from exhaustion, some from disease, others from hopelessness, so unbearable they threw themselves on the electrified fences, choosing death over another day of pain. The nightmare was unending. Each morning, prisoners emerged from their bunks half-dead, hollow-eyed, just to be screamed at by guards. Their days: slave labor, beatings, starvation, cold, terror, and repeat. This was a world designed to wipe out every last trace of humanity. And yet Frankl began to observe something inside this living hell. Not everyone broke. Some people, against all odds, kept going. Despite the horror, the cold, the hunger, something inside them refused to die. Why? Frankl became less a psychiatrist, more an observer. The camps became the ultimative unwanted experiment in human psychology. Through his exhaustion and his own suffering, Frankl studied the people around him. Those who had nothing left to live for faded quickly, becoming shadows of themselves. Their eyes went flat and lifeless. They stopped caring, stopped eating, and gave up. Death soon followed. But then there were others. People with even the tiniest shred of purpose, a memory, a goal, a hope for the future. They were different. Frankl watched an elderly man endure the freezing cold because he dreamed of seeing his daughter again one day. Another prisoner, an artist, spoke in whispers about the paintings he would make if only he survived. There was a scientist who'd given up, until Frankl gently reminded him of the research he hadn't finished, and the books only he could write. You could see the flicker of hope, most like watching a dying ember flare back to life. Frankl summed up what he saw over and over: those who have a why can endure almost anyhow. In those prison camps, Viktor Frankl's theories about meaning weren't just ideas, they were lifelines. Every day, he watched unimaginable suffering unfold around him. Some prisoners faded fast, losing themselves to despair, but others, somehow, held on. What made the difference? Through exhaustion and hunger, Frankl realized it all came down to one thing: purpose. Those who clung to a sense of why could endure almost anything. Frankl paid attention. He saw a scientist on the edge of giving up, convinced there was no point in surviving. Rather than soothing him with empty hope, Frankl pressed a question: what if there's something, a piece of unfinished work, waiting for you after this? He reminded the man about his research, those books no one else could complete. A spark returned to the scientist's eyes. Even the faintest sense of duty shifted his outlooks. Suddenly, he had a new reason to fight for survival. Frankl observed. This time and again, those with a goal, no matter how faint, lasted longer. For one, it was the hope of reuniting with a loved one. For another, it was a dream left unfinished, meaning even fragile, even imagined made, suffering bearable. Despite the overwhelming horror surrounding him, Frankl realized the Nazis could rob prisoners of nearly everything: their possessions, their family, their identities. But one thing remained untouchable: the ability to choose their response. In the depths of misery, people still had control over their inner world. But they let pain devour them, or could they use it to create meaning? For Frankl, this wasn't a philosophical exercise, it was how he survived. He pictured himself someday lecturing about what he'd witnessed, or writing about the lessons learned. That imagined future, the hope to teach, to write, to create something out of his suffering, became a purpose worth struggling for. Even in moments of greatest despair, he held to one core idea: suffering by itself is meaningless. But the moment you give it meaning, it becomes bearable. When Viktor Frankl finally walked out of Auschwitz, he was completely alone. No family, no home, nothing certain about the future. But he carried with him a revelation that no prison, no tormentor, no loss could ever take away. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. It was this realization that kept him alive during his darkest days, and it was this insight he became determined to share with as many people as possible. Back in Vienna, the city he loved was unrecognizable. War had scarred every street. The music and conversation that once filled the air had vanished. Frankl's loved ones were gone. Anyone else might have crumbled under the weight of such devastation. But years witnessing who survived and who didn't had taught Frankl something critical. It was never about raw strength or intelligence. It always came down to purpose. Faced with grief that could have destroyed him, Frankl found strength instead. He chose to act. He began to write. In just 9 days, Viktor Frankl poured all his experiences and insights onto paper. The result was the book Man's Search for Meaning. The story he told, and the wisdom he distilled, would ripple out and change countless lives. Frankl's greatest contribution to psychology was deceptively simple. He believed the most powerful force driving human beings isn't pleasure, as Freud said, or power, as Adler claimed its meaning. And from this idea, he built a new method for treating emotional pain: logotherapy. Logotherapy, Viktor Frankl's theory of meaning. Traditional therapies focused on the past, digging into childhood memories and traumas, unearthing hidden hurts. But Frankl steered clients in a different direction, toward the future. Instead of asking, "What do you expect from life?" he'd ask, "What does life expect from you?" This small shift turned self-pity into responsibility. Frankl's method gave people 3 essential paths for finding meaning, no matter their circumstances: through work, creating, or doing something valuable. Frankl noticed that even in the camps, prisoners gained strength from unfinished projects or missions waiting for them, doctors dreaming of healing again, writers imagining the books they'd pen if they ever survived. Through love, experiencing deep connections with others. Frankl's own memories of his wife, Tilly, the thought of her love, kept him alive day after impossible day. For him, love wasn't just comfort. It was a purpose powerful enough to transcend suffering. Through suffering, transforming pain into personal growth. Frankl's most radical insight was that suffering, while never desirable, could be made meaningful. He told the story of a grieving husband who couldn't imagine moving on after his wife's death. Frankl gently reframed his pain. By surviving, the man was sparing his wife greater grief. That perspective didn't make the pain disappear, but it changed. It gave it weight, value, even dignity. For Frankl, logotherapy was about more than healing wounds. It helped people step forward, take responsibility for their present and future, instead of being trapped by the past. A radical question. Frankl famously asked deeply distressed clients a question: "Why haven't you killed yourself yet?" Shocking, yes, but for many, it revealed a new focus, not on what made them miserable, but on what tethered them to life, family, dreams. Some, as yet unfinished task. Once they found something to live for, their suffering changed. Hope, however faint, was enough to begin again. Why Frankl's ideas still matter? You might wonder, why does a philosophy shaped in the horror of a concentration camp matter today? Because everyone faces suffering, loss, failure, heartbreak, doubt. These come for all of us. Our instinct is to wonder, why me? Frankl's gift was to flip that question. What can I make out of this pain? It's a subtle change, but it shifts you from being a victim to an active creator of meaning. Frankl's work went on to inspire millions. From people battling depression to athletes chasing new limits, from grieving families to anyone searching for purpose. His message: you can't always control life's events, but you can control your response. In that choice lies your freedom and, ultimately, your meaning. Frankl didn't just teach survival, he taught people how to live. Frankl's approach didn't just live on paper, showed up in how people everywhere began to face suffering, and in the way the mental health world started to think about meaning. The world tried to move back toward happiness and comfort after the war, but Frankl's story was proof that comfort isn't the deepest human need. Meaning is after the war. Frankl went back to helping people, not just survivors of the camps, but anyone struggling with despair, loss, or uncertainty. His message was both gentle and honest. Suffering is inevitable, but meaning is always within reach. He saw people from all walks of life, patients crippled by depression, families mourning loved ones, young people feeling lost and empty. For each one, he had a question. What work gives you purpose? Who do you love, and who relies on you? What pain could you transform into something that serves you, or even helps someone else? Frankl argued that the modern world is obsessed with happiness. Ads promise us joy if we just buy the right thing, meet the right person, or achieve enough success. But Viktor Frankl said happiness doesn't come by chasing it. Happiness, he wrote, cannot be pursued. It must ensue. In short, happiness is a byproduct of living for something meaningful. Aim for meaning, and happiness will find you, not the other way around. This was more than a comforting idea. It became the cornerstone for thousands of therapists, teachers, and leaders. Frankl's logotherapy invited people to see themselves as agents, not victims of their own lives. He insisted that no matter the circumstances, there is always a small space between what happens and how you respond. Inside that space is your power to choose. That's where real freedom lives. Frankl captured this with his famous insight. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. In the camps, he learned that even when stripped of control, people could still decide how they'd face suffering. That realization became the most valuable thing they had, something no guard could take. So, what does that mean for the rest of us? Living outside the shadow of Auschwitz, but sometimes caught in our own cycles of pain, anxiety, or doubt. Frankl philosophy isn't just for survivors of unthinkable horrors. It's for anyone confronted by loss, rejection, setbacks, or the subtle ache of an unfulfilled life. Think of the people around you. Some bounce back after tragedy, while others are crushed. Some turn hardship into wisdom, others let it consume them. Frankl's work helps us understand that difference. It's not that resilient people are never afraid or never sad, they just refuse to let their pain go to waste. They make it mean something. The 3 paths to meaning. Frankl consistently pointed to the 3 paths any of us can take to create meaning, creating value through work or deeds. This doesn't mean you must be the next Picasso or Steve Jobs. It can be as simple as dedication to a craft, helping someone in need, solving a problem, or pouring energy into a project that matters, even if no one else sees it. Frankl found that people of all backgrounds, from artists to janitors, could find pride and purpose in their labor, experiencing meaning through love. Not just romantic love, but any relationship that's built on genuine care. Being there for a child, aging parent, friend, or even a stranger can give your life a depth you can't get any other way. Frankl survived the camps in part by returning, again and again, in his mind, to his love for his wife. Even when he didn't know if she was alive, her memory kept him going. It gave him a reason bigger than hunger or pain. Finding purpose in suffering itself. This is the hardest, yet the most transformative path. None of us want to suffer. But when suffering is unavoidable, whether it's illness, heartbreak, or tragedy, Frankl encourages us not to ask, "Why is this happening to me?" but, "What can I do with this? How can I use even this pain to grow, help someone, or discover a new strength in myself?" He told the story of a man shattered by losing his wife. Frankl didn't try to take away his pain. Instead, he helped the man see that surviving was an act of love, a way to shield his wife from being the one left alone. That made the grief meaningful, if not easy. Applying Frankl's wisdom to everyday life. So how can you use Frankl's insights in your own world? Start with these 3 questions. What work can I dedicate myself to? Even simple goals can anchor us. Teaching, creating, building, volunteering, or mastering a skill. Who do I love, and who needs me? Relationships are a bottomless well of meaning. Reach out to your circle, or broaden it with kindness to others. How can I transform my pain? Every struggle, minor or major, can be used to create something. Insight, art, service, resilience. Modern psychologists and coaches have embraced these ideas. You'll hear echoes of Frankl's voice, whether you're reading about finding your why in business books, listening to podcasts about resilience, or sitting in therapy. The wisdom shapes everything from how athletes train to how leaders inspire their teams. But none of this means the search for meaning is simple. Frankl was clear. Living for meaning isn't about avoiding pain. In fact, some of the greatest purpose comes out of the hardest moments. A parent nursing a sick child through the night isn't having fun, but they're living a life full of meaning. An artist pushing past self-doubt, or an activist fighting for a cause, may struggle every day, but ask them why they keep going, and they'll tell you, because it matters. Our culture often confuses comfort with happiness. Frankl turns that upside down. True fulfillment comes from challenge, commitment, and leaning into struggle for something greater. And here's what Frankl would urge you to remember. At the end of the day, we can't always control circumstances, but we can always control how we respond. That's our power, our freedom, our best shot at many, even when the rest of the world feels chaotic, unfair, or senseless. Frankl's philosophy isn't just lofty words, it's practical, and it's needed more than ever in today's world. Let's face it, life now is saturated with the pursuit of comfort, pleasure, and instant gratification. Social media tells us happiness is found in likes, followers, and the next big trend. Advertisements bombard us with images of effortless joy. Yet, paradoxically, more people than ever report feeling empty, lost, or anxious. Why? According to Frankl, it's because true fulfillment, the kind that lasts, can't be achieved by chasing happiness for its own sake. When you make happiness the ultimate goal, you end up constantly measuring what you lack, always one step away from enough. Instead, Frankl teaches that by aiming beyond happiness, by seeking meaning in work, love, and even in pain, happiness comes as a byproduct. That's why so many who volunteer, nurse sick loved ones, chase audacious dreams, or fight for a bigger cause, often feel the greatest sense of joy, even through hardship. Let's revisit Frankl's 3 primary pathways to meaning, but with a modern lens. 1. Meaning through work and creation. This is about dedicating yourself to something that feels significant, whether or not the world notices. It might be starting a small business, writing a story, building a garden, mentoring someone, or simply putting your all into a passion project. The revitalizing force isn't in fame or money, but in knowing your daily effort shapes something that matters. Think about it. How many people report their greatest satisfaction, not in the achievement, but in the striving? 2. Meaning through relationships and love. Who do you love? Who needs you? It's the depth and authenticity of our connections that fill life with purpose. Frankl found in the camps that thinking of his wife, her face, her love sustained him against all odds. Today, the principle is the same. Investing in family, caring for a child, supporting a friend, or even participating in a passionate community, all deliver meaning that can outlast nearly any pain. These bonds become anchors in the storm, giving us reasons to keep going even when life is at its bleakest. 3. Meaning in suffering and growth. This is Frankl's most radical path and, for many, the hardest to grasp. He didn't suggest we seek suffering, but when life inevitably hands us pain, we're not helpless. Rather than seeing hardship as pointless, we can choose to assign it meaning. Think of people who've survived illness only to become fierce advocates for others, or those who transform grief into a mission to help others heal. Frankl saw, again and again, that hardship, faced with purpose, leads to a depth of character and compassion that simply can't be reached any other way. Frankl illustrated this point powerfully with a true story. A patient who had lost his wife was drowning in despair. Instead of trying to soothe him with platitudes, Frankl asked, "If you had died first, how would your wife have felt?" The man realized she would have suffered terribly. Frankl gently said, "You are bearing the pain so she doesn't have to." This shift gave the man dignity. His suffering now had meaning. It didn't erase the pain, but it transformed the experience from pointless agony into an act of love, from suffering to strength. Applying Frankl's wisdom. So, how can you take Frankl's century-old wisdom into your own modern life? Let's break it down, step by step. A. Shift the question you ask yourself. Most of us, when crisis hits, ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Frankl would challenge you, "How can I use this?" Instead of sinking into the "why me" trap, turn your mind toward, "How might I grow, help others, or create purpose from this moment?" B. Embrace your freedom to choose. Frankl's insight from Auschwitz is this: between what happens to us and how we respond, there is a space. In that sliver of freedom, we can choose our reaction, our attitude, and our next move. Even if you can't change your circumstances, you can always decide how you'll meet them. That might mean taking one small action each day, writing a page, calling a friend, learning something new, or showing kindness when you feel least able. Focus on what you can contribute. Ask yourself, what can I build, give, or nurture, no matter how small? Whether it's a work goal, an artistic pursuit, or showing up for someone who counts on you, contribution brings meaning. Even in a dead-end job or dark period, you can find ways, however tiny, to make a difference to one person, or even just to yourself. Center relationships. Who in your life do you love, and who loves you? Sometimes, just holding on for the sake of another, your children, partner, friend, or even a pet, can provide purpose that gets you through almost anything. Reach out, deepen connections. Let love, in all its forms, give you reason to carry. Transform suffering into mission. Think of your pain not as a closed door, but as a possible beginning. Instead of letting loss or failure define you, consider, what strength or compassion have I gained from this? How might I use this experience to help someone else? Even your hardest moments can be woven into something meaningful. Modern proof of Frankl's approach. Frankl's ideas aren't just theoretical. Over the decades, man's search for meaning has become a lifeline for millions. From soldiers facing the trauma of war, to patients in hospitals, business leaders weathering failure, and everyday people coping with loss or uncertainty. In therapy offices around the world, in podcasts, leadership seminars, and self-help books, you'll spot echoes of Frankl's logotherapy everywhere. Find your why. Make your struggle your strength. Choose how you respond. Whether it's a CEO guiding a team through chaos, an athlete coming back from injury, or a parent holding a family together, it's the same fundamental message. Purpose and autonomy change everything, and the power lies in its simplicity. You don't need to wait for perfect conditions or a grand epiphany. You can begin right now by seeking out small ways to make your work, your love, or even your pain matter. Facing today's challenges today, uncertainty touches every part of life. Maybe you're worried about your career, your relationships, or your sense of direction. Maybe you wake up with nagging doubts about your place in the world. Frankl's guidance is steady. Purpose isn't something you stumble across. It's something you build, day by day, by finding what matters and choosing again and again to serve it. And when you feel powerless, remember, even if you can't change your outer world, you are always free to choose your inner stance. This is what broke the power of the concentration camps for Frankl, and it's what breaks the cycle of despair for so many today. Viktor Frankl's story is not just a chapter in history books. It's a living guide for anyone searching for a reason to keep moving forward, especially when life gets hard. His message rings through decades because every single one of us, in some season, will face pain, loss, or uncertainty. What matters is not avoiding these struggles, but learning how to find meaning inside them. Think about it. You don't have to face a tragedy on the scale of Auschwitz to feel adrift. Maybe it's the end of a relationship, the loss of a loved one, a setback at work, or simply that quiet, aching sense that something important is missing from your everyday life. Frankl's core question, what purpose can I draw from this, can transform moments of misery or confusion into stepping stones for growth. If you need a practical starting point, here are a few simple questions borrowed straight from Frankl's own approach. What project or passion, even a small one, could give your days more focus? Who do you care about deeply? Who counts on you? And how can you show up for them? What challenge or heartache could you use as fuel to help someone else, or develop new strength in yourself? Remember, meaning doesn't have to be grand. It's found in the small, daily acts of caring, creating, laughing, mourning, and giving. Frankl showed that even in the most brutal places, the tiniest choice to comfort another prisoner, to imagine a future, to honor the memory of a loved one carries profound power. You might be surprised by just how much Frankl's story continues to shape the world. His book, Man's Search for Meaning, has been translated into dozens of languages, read by over 12 million people, and is still handed out everywhere, from therapy offices to military training programs. Its lessons are taught to business leaders, students, athletes, and anyone searching for purpose. Holocaust survivors, trauma patients, and people facing terminal illness have all turned to Frankl's wisdom when hope seemed out of reach. That's because the core of his message isn't about surviving the Holocaust, it's about surviving and then thriving when you don't know where to turn next. Frankl said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." This is a radical shift in perspective. In a culture obsessed with controlling every detail, he reminds us that we are never powerless. Our true strength is in our ability to choose our attitude, no matter what comes. Don't compare your suffering to someone else's. Don't feel guilty for struggling, or dismiss your own pain because it isn't as bad as what Frankl faced. The point isn't who suffers more, it's what you do with what's in front of you. Frankl's genius was making everyone see that their hardships can be transformed, not erased but woven into a story of purpose. Let's return to the powerful image at the heart of all Frankl's teaching, between stimulus and response. There is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response, and in that choice, our growth and our freedom. You always get to decide what kind of person you'll be, no matter how harsh the circumstances. Take the story of Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years in prison, not a Nazi camp, but a system designed to break his spirit. Instead, Mandela turned his suffering into wisdom and the fuel for forgiveness, helping to heal a divided nation. Or think of ordinary people, parents, nurses, volunteers, artists who face hardship not with bitterness, but by finding ways to love, to serve, to create. They aren't made of different stuff. They simply chose to reach for meaning. Frankl's philosophy is radically empowering, but it comes with a challenge. Meaning won't simply land on your doorstep. You have to create it, often out of the raw material of your struggles. So ask yourself honestly, what hard experience could I shape into strength, wisdom, or service? What cause, relationship, or dream could I invest in, starting today? When life shakes me, how can I use the space between what happens and how I react, to grow instead of shrink? If you feel lost or empty, it doesn't mean you're broken, it just means you have a choice to make. And even the smallest choices in the direction of meaning, caring for someone, learning, building, forgiving, or simply refusing to give up can add up to a powerful, purposeful life. Frankl's legacy lives on in anyone who refuses to let pain be pointless, anyone who turns heartache into a mission, or uses adversity to spark compassion. His ideas are a roadmap for transforming suffering into significance. So, no matter where you are right now, facing hardship, navigating a transition, or simply searching for more, know this: you have the same freedom Frankl discovered. The world can take almost everything away, but it cannot take your power to choose how you respond and what story you build from your experiences. Let this be your invitation. Right now, ask yourself, what struggle in my life could I transform into strength? What deeper purpose might I be called to fulfill? What choice, however small, can I make today that will add meaning to my story? Meaning is not something you stumble across. It's something you create, moment by moment, through your work, your love, your attitude, and, yes, even your suffering. That is Viktor Frankl's lasting gift. The rest, what you do with your suffering, your search, your precious one and only life, is up to you. Thank you for watching. If this video spoke to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others searching for meaning. Your journey matters. Remember, suffering is part of life, but so is the power to make it matter.